my fiancée planned a wedding surprise that left me stunned. She invited my estranged brother who betrayed me, sparking chaos and reflection. I, male, 28, have a very complicated family history. Our dad skipped town after I was born, leaving my mom to fend for herself and her 2 kids. I am the younger of 2 brothers, and my sibling, Dan, male, 34, was turned into the man of the house a lot earlier than he should have been. With mom working 2 jobs, he also had to take care of me when I was growing up and was parentified due to the circumstances of our childhood. When I was old enough to understand, around the age of 10 or so, my elder brother decided to move out without any warning. He left a note saying that he wasn't meant to carry people, and that he wanted a better life for himself. This hurt mom and me as well. I was only a kid and it felt like the person I looked up to had decided I wasn't worth his time. Even worse was the fact that he didn't reach out to me at all, never mind mom. I would get it if he couldn't have it in himself to come back and live with us or support us financially, but it just felt like he had forgotten all about us. I decided that I would never treat family like a burden and began working my ass off so I could end up supporting mom and myself for a better life. I got into a great college through a scholarship and ended up getting a 6-figure job as soon as I graduated. Dan had reached out to me after I started working, and he told me that he wanted to fix things and was in a better place now. This was when I was around 25. I told him that I wasn't interested at all, and he should have thought of that before leaving me and mom behind. I heard from mom that he had reached out to her too, and she had forgiven him. I respected that decision, but made it clear that I wasn't interested in cutting him any slack because he had a change of heart when it was convenient for him to do so. So I am aware that mom talks to Dan and sometimes catches up with him, but I haven't been able to bring myself to contact him or allow him to contact me. Mom doesn't push me to speak to him either, and I feel like this has worked best for us. I began dating my fiancée, Clara, female, 26, a year ago, and it was love at first sight, kind of a whirlwind romance, I'll admit. But everything seemed to be going well. We got engaged 4 months ago, and we were planning on getting married to SAP. However, before the wedding planning took place, I opened up to her about my family history. I've usually been private about it and told her about my feelings and about my brother. She was sympathetic, but pushed a lot to get me to forgive Dan. I mean, she didn't really understand the context of my anger, and I found it presumptuous of her to offer judgment about this issue. We argued about it and I thought I managed to make my perspective clear. Eventually, we got into planning our wedding and future together, and I put this to the back of my mind. Dan wasn't invited, obviously. And while mom wasn't happy about this choice when I told her, she understood why. A week before the wedding, we had booked a hotel near the beach in Florida. Clara told me that she had something special planned for the day before the wedding, and she hoped that I would appreciate it. I mean, you can see where this is going, right? I didn't have any clue what she meant, and I thought she had managed to do something thoughtful or cool about the venue. I've been trying to get a specific band to play at our wedding, but they were all booked up. When I showed up at the empty venue, Clara was waiting there for me. Babe, I know how important family is to you, and I think you need to move on with forgiving those who've hurt you in the past. It's going to help you and me too, she said, and then called Dan out from the adjacent room. Hey, Op. Long time no see. Clara told me that you were getting married and she invited me to the wedding. I was so freaking pissed that I wanted to turn around and walk away right then and there. Looking at Clara, I said, you had no right to call Dan to our wedding and you must be crazy if you think I'll let him be there. And then turning to Dan, I told him he was a loser since he didn't respect my wishes, and I didn't want to see him anywhere near me or Clara. I don't think Clara expected this reaction. Probably again because she wasn't aware of the depth of my relationship with my brother, and I could see tears welling up in her eyes. I know she was well-intentioned, but this was too much for me. I feel like I may have been tar because I told her that I wanted to call the wedding off and take some space. I left after saying that while Dan consoled Clara, shouting in me as I went, please Op, just let me talk to you. It's been a week since then, and the wedding is on thin ice. The venue is gone, and our guests are pissed. Even my mom is on Clara's side, and I felt like running away from everyone here. Yesterday though, I had a conversation with mom that made me feel incredibly guilty. She told me that ever since I had graduated or got the first time Dan showed up again, he had been sending over money to help support mom. Even more than that, he was well off and had a self-made manufacturing business. I asked her why she hadn't told me all these years, and she said that Dan had made her promise not to. When I pressed them more about it, she told me to speak to him and find out. Curiosity got the better of me and I reached out to Dan. I told him on call that I wanted to know why he hadn't told me about helping out the family. He told me that he wanted to meet me first, so we ended up at a diner we used to go to as kids. It felt surreal. And Dan finally revealed his logic. He said, I didn't want you to think that I only came back when I had made it and when it was easy for me. When I started sending mom money, my business hadn't started up properly, and I was pushing myself to support her. I didn't need you to see that, and most importantly, I wanted you to forgive me from your own heart. Not because mom asked you for it. For years, I've been living with your rejection. But when Clara reached out to me, I hoped that we could finally reconcile. She told me that she could sense pain in your words when you told her about us. I won't lie, all of this information did shock me, and I regretted the way I behaved with Dan over the past few years. Even worse, in my heart of hearts, I was already trying to figure out how to iron things out with Clara. We had barely spoken after the incident, and I had genuinely considered breaking things off with her. First things first though, I had a word with Dan. Looking him straight in the eye, I said, Dan, I won't lie. Your leaving was still the worst thing you could have done. I poured my heart out then and there, and at the end asked him to forgive me for my coldness. He asked me to work with him to make things right as well, and we decided we would move forward as brothers. On the ride back though, I was equally excited, but also disgusted with self of the way I reacted with Carla when we got Dan to come to the wedding and even afterwards while we were still living together. Everything had been really tense, so read it, or was my reaction justified in the context of everything that had taken place? Update. Okay. I've been reading everyone's comments, and I agree in parts with both the people saying NTA and TA. Most importantly, I've had a calm, open-minded conversation with Carla, where I have tried to explain to her that even though I have now resolved things with Dan, it wasn't the best idea to call him to the wedding like that. She seemed to understand and apologize for assuming that I would have an epiphany about forgiving my brother right then and there. I also asked her if we could take things slow and maybe continue our relationship before setting up the wedding again. Not because of the fiasco that happened, but in general, to know each other better. Carla agreed even though she was excited about the wedding and a little beaten up about this. Update 2. Okay. So Carla opened up to me about feeling some resentment about the way I behaved during the wedding, and I think that is completely fair. Most importantly, I'm crazy happy she could actually approach me about it and also recognize it. She also didn't let it influence her actions towards me, which had been nothing but loving, but to nip it in the bud. We agreed to couples counseling, and I don't think this will hurt us in any way. Update 3. I've been getting up to speed with Dan's life now, and he's impressed me with the way he's grown up. We went on a trip to all our usual sponsors as kids and talked about how things are nowadays. He also said that he wanted to pay for our wedding when the day comes, since he feels like he was the reason it got postponed this time around. I won't lie, I don't need the money, but it was a sweet gesture nonetheless. It's been a month or so after the conversation with Carla as well, and our relationship is going well. We even have had a trip with Mom and Dan, and it genuinely felt wholesome. From what I can make out, all our past problems have been forgiven, and we're ready to move forwards. Although I can see your side, you're still the. While Carla was out of bounds, you should have the foresight to realize that she didn't mean any harm. I mean, I also get calling off the wedding, but the fact that you were so cold and mean for a whole week afterwards is also really bad. NTA. And, although I don't understand why you took so long to forgive your brother, it's not my place to force it. I don't get all the other comments saying you should have been nicer, since Carla was well-intentioned. She did cause you to hurt no matter what. Although, I am glad to see both of you dealing with it like mature adults and not letting your relationship crash and burn. Next story. Female 27, I'm engaged to my fiancé, male 45, and we plan to get married in July. I have 2 kids with my late husband. My soon-to-be mother-in-law, who I will refer to as mother-in-law, does not know this full context as I am a private person and I'm not overly close with her. He passed when I was 23, and I really only discuss his passing once I am incredibly close with someone. I have only spoken to mother-in-law at a handful of holidays and never had a conversation that extended far beyond the basics. Now to get into this, we recently hosted our first Thanksgiving. I felt very accomplished and was excited to share this moment with my soon-to-be family. The only issue being that I had totally forgotten the mashed potatoes, which seemed to have mother-in-law in a very pissy mood. Thankfully, fiancé's sister offered to go to the store to buy some instant mashed potatoes, to which I was very grateful. She asked me to check in on her youngest daughter, who was in an upstairs bedroom with my kids and had been very quiet recently. Moms of Reddit know this is never a good thing. I, of course, agree. I go to check on them and find them fully engrossed in Encanto. Left sitting at the table downstairs were my soon-to-be mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, fiancé, and most importantly, sister-in-law's oldest daughter, female, 15. As I make my way downstairs, I do note the silence at the table, but don't think much of it. After the dinner, however, while everyone is leaving, sister-in-law's oldest daughter pulled me aside and asked to speak to me. I asked her if everything is okay, and she explains that while I was gone, mother-in-law made a comment. Something to the notes of how she didn't get why fiancé would get with someone who is already used up, and that running around with someone like that would ruin his reputation among men. Along with another comment that she said she wasn't comfortable repeating. She said she wouldn't have felt right if she hadn't told me. I thanked her profusely, honestly, completely in shock at what I had just heard. Mother-in-law had already left at this point. I am a very confrontational person because I believe it gets drama over wick. I called her and asked her if it was true, and she got really quiet before admitting that it was. She said something along the lines of, "I'm glad you know how everyone feels now." I was getting tired of hiding it. When I started to cry, she replied, and this is a direct quote, "You act like a redacted. You get treated like one." In a moment of anger, I uninvited her for my wedding. My fiancé is very upset and is threatening to leave if I don't fix this all. Now he and our friends are all calling me the a-hole, and many have been ostracizing me. I am open to criticism, but I really don't think I did anything wrong. So AITA for uninviting my soon-to-be mother-in-law for my wedding? You are absolutely NTA. The things she said were beyond horrible. Your fiancé, let alone this woman, say horrible things about you in your own home. Then he had the audacity to be mad at you for your reaction. I hope you kick him to the curb and find a man who not only loves you, but respects you. The only people who aren't, in this situation are you, your kids, and the 15-year-old. You deserve better than a 45-year-old who still trips over his umbilical cord. NTA. Do not marry this man. Yes. His mother is a raging misogynistic a-hole, but your fiancé is more of a problem because he's not only comfortable with his comments. I get the distinct impression he shares a similar opinion. You even mentioned how she implied this is a shared opinion, and no one is defending you or ripping her a new one for what she said. This says everything. You're literally the only person that isn't the a-hole in this situation, and the daughter that warned you. This whole family is disgusting, and I don't think it's a coincidence your husband went after someone 20 years younger than he is. Also, you said our friends, but do your friends know the real story about what happened? I have a feeling your husband is lying to make himself and his mother look like the victims. Next story. I'm 19 male. My girlfriend, 18 female, got her license about 3 months ago, but last week was the first time that I've been in the car with her while she was driving. My car was in the shop and she came to pick me up from work. And on our way back, she decides to stop at a gas station. We pull up to the machine. She looks at me funny for a moment, doesn't say anything, and then gets out of the car and starts pumping her gas. I ask her what the funny look was and she says, "Really? How do I have a man in the car and I'm the one pumping gas? Because it's your car and you're the one driving." She says, "Wow. And you're not even a little bit embarrassed watching your girlfriend pump gas in?" The cold while you're sitting in the nice warm car listening to music? I say, no, I was actually quite comfortable. And if I wasn't here, wouldn't you have to pump the gas by yourself anyway, she says. But that's the point. You'll hear a woman should never pump gas while a man's in the car. My dad, uncle, cousin, brother, nephew, whoever would have never just did what you did just now. I say, well, I'm not them and I don't subscribe to that. Can we go now? Mind you, the whole time we're having this conversation, she hasn't even started the car. The gas station is filling up with cars and she literally is hogging a machine. She says, I'm not moving until you apologize. To make it even worse, the guy, waiting in the car behind us walks over and politely taps on the window and says, hey, sorry. Are you guys leaving or? And she rolls down the window and asks him, if your girlfriend or wife who's driving, would you still pump your gas? He says, probably. And she looks at me in victory and we finally move. Or she says, seriously, don't ever do that again. I probably should have let it go, but I couldn't. No. If we're in your car and you're driving, you're pumping the gas. She starts going off again until I can't take it anymore. I get out and start walking down side streets to a friend's place. She's following me, calling my name and my phone, but I ignore her and eventually lose her when she gets stuck at a red light. Since last Friday, I've been getting all sorts of angry messages and texts from her friends about how I'm not a real man for not pumping gas. And even my friends were telling me, yeah, man, you should always pump the girl's gas. It's just principle. That whole week was finals week, so I didn't really pay too much attention to what they were saying. But finals ended yesterday, and I'm home now for Christmas. My extended family is all here, so I decided to ask them if a guy should always pump gas for the girl. I'm confused because all the men are saying yes, but all the women are saying that while they appreciate the men doing it, they can also do it by themselves even when a man is in the car. They're all still arguing downstairs and it's getting pretty heated. So I decided to write to you guys to ask Eta. And should I apologize? NTA. You guys have two different expectations, which isn't in itself a problem. You pump the gas, she pumps the gas. Who cares really? To each their own. However, how she treated you during this clash of expectations is a huge problem. She had an expectation of you that she didn't communicate, and instead of communicating that expectation and having a kind conversation about it, she pretty much just attacked you. That's not okay, NTA. It's like a sexist chivalry thing, like only holding doors open for women, or walking on the side of the sidewalk close to the traffic. It's 2022. I don't really need or want a man to do stuff for me just because I'm a woman, but your girlfriend clearly feels different. To me, this would be an incompatible difference in how we view relationships. To be clear, if you wanna hold the door for me because that's nice, please do. But I would also expect you to hold the door for the other men as well. If you wanna fix my lawnmower because you know how to do that, I would be appreciative. But only do things because you wanna help another person, not because you're a